let me thank you for all taking part. Introduce briefly, just going from earlier starter on. Sriram is US and India splitting his time entrepreneur, quite well acquainted with the administrative system and the political system of Tamil Nadu. Has cutting across political lines and the bureaucracy and the police and everybody has good relationships with a lot of people based on his talent and his insight. So I think, he has a unique perspective to offer today. James is famous for all of us from the demonetization days, very astute data seeker, data analyzer, interpreter, like me, an engineer by profession, but out of personal passion and out of perseverance and the kind of intellect, has been highlighting a lot of the quantitative ways of showing good or bad governance in India at different times. Shankar is a IT specialist, entrepreneur, has done business in Malaysia, is a freelancer doing some work in India for different corporates. Again, somebody who has been keenly following the data as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned and has some insights to add. And, since I'm the host, I won't go into talking much about myself, except to say thank you again for being here. Let me start by just giving my perspective as an MLA, as a policymaker, as somebody who should be, advising the government, even in opposition, on how to handle the crisis. That in any situation, in any decision making in policy, of course, data is the basis for decision making. There are usually very few easy choices. Most of them have some complexity, some difficulty, some trade-off involved. And in that trade-off, information informs policymakers about the relative cost or benefit of taking actions or avoiding actions. In particular, in a crisis, the data becomes even more important. And in this kind of unprecedented crisis, even though we have some history of the first SARS epidemic, of the swine flu epidemic, of the Ebola epidemic, I think the scale of this is so high that the value of information is hard to overstate. If you do not know what is the risk of spread, you cannot determine what is the trade-off of economic shutdown, which you choose as a way of, as a consequence of trying to spread the disease, versus the risk of the disease. If you do not know the severity of the consequences of the disease, then you're also not able to make informed decisions. If you do not know the fatality, which is the worst of all, then again, you're very constrained in your ability to make decisions. So from that perspective, of all the available data that one can have, clearly testing is the most valuable because it's a leading indicator. If you test early enough and if you test enough of a sample, then it gives you an indication. And if you do it smartly, where you're randomizing the sample, it gives you a leading indicator of what is going on and saves you a lot of guesswork. If you cannot do that, of course, you have to use concurrent or retrospective indicators like hospitalization rates or death rates. So with that, I will pass it off to Sriram to talk briefly for 2 or 3 minutes about the different types of tests available, the kind of trade-offs between speed, cost, and value of information from those. Sriram?
Yeah, hi, Thiaga. Hi, James. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. So thanks for this opportunity, but let me start off with a confession that I'm not a medical expert. I'm not an expert in epidemiology, but this is on the basis of my reading and on the basis of what I can see happening worldwide from the articles that I'm reading. So there are 2 kinds of testing that I have seen prevalent across the US, in Europe, and in India as well. One is the PCR testing, that is to find out the virus in somebody's body. And then the other is the rapid antibody testing, that is to find out if the person was already infected at some point in time. So these are the two kinds of testing that is probably prevalent across the world now that people are talking about. There are some tests that I have been reading, that is community-based test, which is a research that's being done in Oxford that's still not out. So I have no other information other than the fact that there's some testing methodology that is still under research. As far as PCR and antibody test is concerned, let me give my perspective of why a two-stage approach is going to be a foolproof methodology to deploy in stratified points across the state of Tamil Nadu, where the density of the population is high, particularly among people who belong to a lower income group with lesser access to healthcare or lesser access to sanitation. The first stage of testing could be an antibody testing, just to find out if the person has an IgM or IgG, which is what I've been reading. The IgM is basically the first stage of infection in the body, is the IgM process. So when it is IgM, we know that the person is corona positive, and then after that, the next level of test that is done is the nose swab test to further confirm whether the person is actually infected with corona. So assuming the antibody test is IgG, then we know that the person had infection and has recovered from the infection, and he's developed an antibody to fight against this virus, and the virus gets broken into smaller components in his body, and his body is being able to recover from that process. So the IgG persons are typically the plasma donors from what I have read. So I think the IgG positive cases are primarily what I would call as an immunity passport holders who could actually go and return to work or whatever. So I think the first stage of testing antibody is very important for us to determine who can return to work safe, because there are two fundamental questions that are lingering in every person's mind. One, the fact that I am not going to die out of corona. The second is it safe to return to workplace now? So these two questions can only be answered through two-stage testing, which is antibody testing to offer immunity passports to people, which is IgG positive. You don't need to do it across the entire population, but you can choose low-income group, you can choose vulnerable groups, that is people who are over 65 age group, diabetic people, hypertension people. So that's not a large number. Whole of India, I think people over 65 is about 6.7% population. So you can take a small group from that and then deploy your testing across the state. And there's another kind of testing which is very interesting, which cannot be deployed apparently in PCR, but that can be deployed in antibody, which is pooled testing, or ELISA methodology that they say. So they can go into a particular street. Tamil Nadu has got 416 hospital on wheels. So these hospital on wheels can be deployed in various constituencies of the state, and you can actually send an alert to people, and you have data pertaining to who's over 65, who's living in a particular constituency, and you can actually tell people if you have problems of asthma.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Sriram. Just a quick question. I appreciate this as a strategy, but if you could just talk about availability, cost, accuracy, and speed of getting results for these two tests.
Right. So on the basis of availability, cost, and the speed of getting the results, antibody tests that I have been reading about varies between 15 minutes and about 30 minutes it takes for a test. And you can deploy a pooled testing for antibody, which is you can take samples of 10 people, put it on a tank, and then you will find out whether it's positive or negative. If it turns out to be positive, then you go on a strategic testing, which is where you start dividing it in clusters. You take 3 people and then test it, and then you take another 3. So whichever tank turns out to be positive, then you start testing those 3. The cost is it could cost you as low as $250. It could cost you as high as $1,300. It depends from companies to companies from what I've
seen. The PCR test?
So PCR test is a nose swab test. From what I have read, you can't do a pooled testing, and that you have to implement the testing on a case-to-case basis, and it could take several hours for a PCR test to be administered. Antibody test accuracy could vary between 32% and 85%. PCR is near accurate. It's the most accurate test that is there, because That's the only test that tells you with absolute certainty whether your body has the virus or not.
Great. Thank you very much. Since we haven't heard from James and Shankar yet, why don't we start with James? James, you've been, I'm sure, observing the data from all over the world. Can you give a few thoughts on which countries have taken which approach, which have looked at kind of mostly PCR or infection testing, which have looked at antibody testing like Germany, and what your take is on which strategy has helped which country? And then after James, maybe Shankar can jump in.
Good morning, everyone. When we are looking into the data, we can see that some countries like South Korea, Germany, etc., are actually looking for. They have done antibody testing. Antibody testing helps the countries to understand how much that population is infected. It will help them to find out one important number. It is called R0. R0 is epidemiologist is saying that number is one infected person, how much he can give infection to the society. So this number is very important. Then every antibody test, if it is tested as positive, it will be confirmed with a PCR test. Otherwise, sometimes this antibody test, this already Sriram explained that one, both this IgM and IgG values, it will take some time to actually turn up. So if you are in the early stages of asymptomatic person, this will not help you. It will take some 14 days to evolve these IgM values, but it will give you whether you are infected, but you are spreading, but you are having an immunity or not. Whether how much the society is having immunity is an important thing. Then comes back to the testing figures. Now, especially the site I am mostly looking into the global data is our world in data. That is a site run by Oxford and other experts from Oxford and other areas. They are now no more talking about. They started with testing or people per million. Now they are, instead of that one, they are started talking about test per thousands. So that means you are looking at a larger value. Only a larger value will give you a more representative figure of how much people are actually got infected. For example, USA is so far done around 35.6 lakh tests, and they are having a TPT 1000. They are actually 10.73 people per thousand. In comparison, India, we have so far, yesterday's data, we have so far done only 3.35 lakh people, and our, in comparison with the 10.73 of USA, we are done 0.27. That's a very low figure, abysmally low figure. South Korea, they have done also 10.7. Italy done around 22.8. Then comes to the neighboring country, our arch rival, Pakistan. They have done almost double of our, they are around 0.44. So UK is done around 5.3. Still they are saying that that is not enough. Another interesting data now everybody is looking, because a couple of days back Mohan Kumar Mangalam asked me about this particular data. So I started looking about that one, because he then asked a question. I given a reply based on my logic, rather than looking into the research papers and what are the discussions on that particular thing, because he was asking about the strike rate of tests per confirmed case. How many tests we are doing to find out a confirmed cases. So coming back into that one, if we are looking that one, Taiwan is doing 132.8 tests to find out the confirmed cases. For each confirmed cases, they are finding out 132.8 tests. That is how many tests and how many confirmed cases you are having. Instead of that one, India is now having around 25.9. UK number is 5.3. US number is 3.3. But when they are talking about this one, they are saying that if you are having less number of tests for confirmed cases, you are not testing enough. You need more number of confirmed cases, because you look into the another factor also. They are saying that another factor, they are saying that how many confirmed cases, the number of confirmed cases is also important. not simply looking into this ratio. Also, they are looking. Also, they are asking that we have to look into the number of diseased persons. These three correlations are very important to see that when I am looking into these correlations compared with the other country, we have a long way to go, because we are still concentrating on certain hotspots and circles. We are not universally testing representative other areas, because people already traveled, they already mix, and whether this one is going to, the present testing strategy is going to give us the symptomatic persons with the SARI. Now they have included SARI also into that. Even though you don't have a travel history also, they expanded, but it was so late. First of all, they had a problem in India when they were started only looking for symptomatic patients. Initially, they only look for a certain countries. They completely ignored the fact that the airports, when you are traveling in a, when you are actually coming from a transit airport, you are mixing with an international population. Even your international flight is also a cross section of the international population. It can have a person from a country which is or a person who are expected. If only you are looking into a certain countries, you are actually creating a very porous screening method. The screening itself is not sufficient. I will talk about that later. For the time, this is my picture. We are actually taking very less in comparison with the international standards.
Great. Thank you, James. I just want to say something slightly here. Sorry to interrupt, Shankar, but I think the point you're making is if you're testing more tests per positive, it means you are random testing and generalizing the population you're testing. And if you test less cases per positive or less tests per positive, it implies you're behind the curve and only testing those people already showing symptoms or already, in the hospital with problems. And as you say, these are correlated to overall numbers. So if you have the luxury of being a place which has a very low infection rate, then automatically you have the luxury, and a small country, you have the luxury of testing many more people per positive. The US and particularly Italy and all that started so late in the testing that they are, testing one positive for every 5 or 6 tests because they have so many people with symptoms or illness. And I think that point is very clear. Shankar, do you want to jump in and say, based on your observation, where you think?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I think James has pretty much covered everything which I thought I should be saying on this on a global level. But I'll just travel one step beyond that. Looking at the scale of it, every country is affected right now in the world. There's no country which is safe. So any country that acts sensibly can come out of this. Any country that has acted arrogant are facing the heat. The classic examples, like we know, it would be like US, Italy, Spain, UK. So everything boils down to one single fact. The administrators has to be proactive. They should not hide behind some PR statistics. Instead, they should be willing to give out the numbers in a more transparent way. That's it.
Great. I think it's very clear, at least for all of us, the value of testing, the value of timing of testing, the value of data from testing as the basis for modeling of return to normalcy or of providing confidence to the people. And both James and Shankar made a very valid point that if you are India, what does it matter which country the risk is higher or not? If at the airport, they're all congregating together. Those of us who travel a lot internationally out of India, which is I think many of us, we know how congested the international airports are, how big the queues are for immigration and customs, and how tightly packed people are. So this logic of only testing people from some countries, or for that matter, doing something like a scan gun temperature screening at the airports, was one of the biggest failures, in my opinion, that the Indian policy took. But let's, given that we are all aware of the scope of the problem and the kind of variables, I think the real upside story here is Kerala. And Kerala, of course, nothing is perfect. And of course, every government in power is going to say a lot more of the good things and miss some of the not so great things they did. But no matter which standard you take, whether Indian standard or national standard, Kerala has done a fantastic job relative to a standard in terms of handling this disease. There's an economic component of it, which we can get to later. There's a compassionate component of it, maybe for a different call. But from a pure, tagging, testing, tracing kind of strategy, Kerala has done a fantastic job. And one of the reasons Kerala has been able to do such a fantastic job, at least as far as I've read, is the phenomenal network or infrastructure they had built. Not technology, not physical infrastructure, but human infrastructure. They had built in terms of the ASHA workers and the panchayat level people involved in the healthcare and so forth. So I thought it would be helpful for us to hear from James about how Kerala kind of got ahead of most people in the world in its capacity to identify, quarantine, trace, tag, test as far as this epidemic is concerned. James?
Thank you. So Kerala is having a story to tell, but I can say that now with a little bit skepticism, I can say that Kerala story is so far successful. But my opinion is we are not yet reached the level of lowering the guard. We reached some around 11 onwards. We are around in a level of flattening the curve. The way the curve is not shooting up, it is almost running parallel to the x-axis when you are plotting everything on the logarithmic scale. Also, our recovery rate and mortality rate is also very high compared with the other places with equal population. Okay, I think there are a couple of small places like Ladakh is there, but this Chhattisgarh is also showing some sort of good type of recovery rate. So come back to Kerala. Kerala is, as of yesterday, Kerala is having 399 cases. But when you are looking into this particular number, you are, that is 18th. But on the 1st of April, we had 265. So how we have done that one is because we had an experience. Mr. Thiaga is already told about our infrastructure in that one, because it is I think Tamil Nadu is also having good type of health infrastructure, but I don't know whether you are having that the Kerala sort of very strong village level or panchayat level 3-tier system is there, because here there is a competitive way. The panchayats are actually proactive in this case, is actually yielded a lot of results. First of all, we started everything from when India government, because Kerala, I can say that Kerala did not venture into anything different from the testing strategy of what ICMR actually guided. I have a very different opinion about that one, but I'm not going to tell about that one. But what Kerala has done when they are asking for the thermal screening itself, Kerala, when they are actually screening the people, they kept the number of the contact details in the airport itself. The government was collecting the contact details of the asymptomatic persons, because at that time the advisory was for them to be self-quarantine or be when they are having some sort of symptoms, come back to the authorities. But the Kerala government actually keep those numbers. They are actually making inquiries through the panchayat and ASHA workers and our PHC centers about these persons. They are making regular queries with that those persons whether they are having. So this particular thing actually helped the Kerala to identify when that person is showing starting symptoms. They are suddenly going then and catching him and going for a testing, and we started the contact tracing and other things. And government is also doing a lot of things on actually containing this particular strategy, this thing. And all these people, when they find out the contact, first contact or second contact, ask them to go to isolation, and they are also under observation and surveillance. If you look into the data, you can see that we are around. We lowered a guard little bit. That I can say that, but at that time it was not. Everyone was not there. But till 5th, we are after 3 cases. Kerala is having the the spike shown in the 8th March. Suddenly we identified 5 people. At that time, we started around 3,500 people. We started monitoring on home isolation and other things in the beginning. But when this 8th March, it was something around only 648 persons under home surveillance and 84 people under hospital observation. But this number suddenly jumped into something around 1.7 lakh people. By 4th of April, and by that time we are actually taken around 750 people, 750 to 800 people in the hospital isolation itself. So this type of a follow-up actually created a lot of awareness and able to us to see that when a person is, because it is not looking for, compared with the other states, we are not looking for when these hotspots, some persons are actually coming back to the hospital with symptoms. Instead of that one, we were looking whether the person is showing the symptoms. We were actually monitoring them to see that whether this huge number of 1.7 lakh people under home quarantine as well as hospital 800 people in hospital quarantine explains that a lot. Because for example, Tamil Nadu government's website is saying that they are having around 2 lakh passengers, plus 2 lakh plus passengers actually coming through the airport. But when we are looking into the people in the surveillance, it is around 80,000 or 90,000 only. So these persons, when their primary contacts and other people, then I am little bit skeptic about how much effective this strategy of tracing the people in comparison with Kerala. So the states which are actually did not follow from the beginning, they only find later a sudden spike. Example, Maharashtra, Gujarat. Gujarat is actually a classical example, because I was really wondering why Gujarat and Tamil Nadu was showing 0 cases when they are before this one. Because when we are looking into the international travel flow, Kerala is much lower than these two states. Because of the business and other potential. You are having a lot of IT business. You are having a lot of this automobile and other. Yours is an industrial area, so your people are actually going all over the world much more than us. We are having a lot of tourist crowd and our people coming back from Gulf. Now I am seeing why I am little bit skeptic is nowadays we are having a lot of cases, very low, taking a lot of time to become showing symptoms. Last case yesterday there was 4 cases. We are having around 5 cases. On that one, 4 cases are from NRIs. Day before yesterday, it was around 1 case. Before that, around 5 cases were NRIs. We remember that entire flights to India stopped on 22nd, and we are taking this much time. So earlier research, one paper published by ICMR as well as one paper published by some researchers in London and US, they were saying that at least you will be 50% of the people who are infected with the COVID will escape through the thermal screening process. But when I am seeing this number, I am seeing that it is much more than that one. Because only very few people in the beginning is only showing some sort of symptoms. They assumed at that time, so some calculation, there will be some research and other thing, they assumed that will be 50% based on certain other countries' data. If in India data we are looking into that one, we will see that it will be much more than that one, because we are having not only in Kerala, it is identified in Telangana and other Andhra Pradesh also. Many other parts of India we are hearing about late turning up of symptoms. That is an area of concern.
Thiaga, I have a different take on this.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, when we often compare these two states, first, I think I see some fundamental differences. Kerala's density of population is much higher than Tamil Nadu's density of population, because Kerala is, I think, about 38,000 square kilometer or something, and Tamil Nadu is like 130,000 square kilometer or something. I think Kerala is at around 866 and Tamil Nadu is around 550 per square kilometer. That said, there are some pockets in Tamil Nadu which is densely populated. That's the first part. The second point I would like to make is in terms of healthcare infrastructure, Tamil Nadu's healthcare infrastructure is far superior to Kerala's healthcare infrastructure. If you actually look at doctors per 1,000 population and beds per 1,000 population as an indication. Because if you look at Tamil Nadu, you are at 1.55 per 1,000 is our hospital to beds ratio in terms of per 1,000, and Kerala is 1 per 1,000. So our infrastructure is better. Where I see the fundamental problem in terms of handling the situation is Kerala is taking the decisions on the basis of technical considerations, whereas Tamil Nadu is taking the decision on the basis of political considerations. This is the fundamental problem I see. And there are 4 corners that are operating in Tamil Nadu where the chief secretary is not in sync with the health secretary. The health minister is not in sync with the chief minister. So there's no unified command in action, which is what is crippling the system at this point in time. That's the first part. The second point, which is an important point that I would like to make at this point in time, is the chief minister keeps talking about in 3 days' time, the corona will be gone. So my point is, normally you will find governments, when it talks about flood relief measures to be provided or any state-related action that has resulted in death, governments will be suspected of covering up the numbers. But this is a pandemic. The government doesn't have to cover the numbers at all. They can be absolutely transparent. The problem is the fundamental thinking in Tamil Nadu, especially with the government there, where if they believe that if the numbers are lesser, their performance is better. I think that's the fundamental problem between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Kerala is taking decisions purely on the basis of technical considerations. Tamil Nadu is taking every decision on the basis of political considerations. You see every statement that is coming on a daily basis. It's like an event management company. Somebody wants to grab the media headline story. Everybody wants to take this whole ecosystem around the state, as you see it, is completely political, as against Kerala, which is handling the pandemic that it is supposed to, the way it is supposed to be handled.
Thank you for that, Sriram. I was
Excuse
going to
me.
say something slightly different. Shankar, 1 second, I'll come to you. I think
Yeah.
you have the most to add after this, but please give me a second. I actually want to pick up on something James said, which is that, what you said exactly, Sriram, is quantified by what James said, in the sense that it is not as if Kerala had a foolproof silver bullet, everything is perfect strategy on day one. The 2 numbers he talked about, the extent of monitoring of arrivals and the extent of quarantining and isolation, how dramatically they jumped between early February and early March. That really is the story to me. The story is that you start on some strategy, you find that you are having outcomes that are not adequate or that are giving you a fear, and then you adapt that strategy and you do it so rapidly and so decisively that you're able to kind of overcome your original limitation and the structural nature of the problem. So in that sense, I'm a politician, so I won't go as far as you. I'll leave your statement. But my point earlier, before you even spoke, is the key point which James says, which I have not seen emphasized enough around the country or in the global media even, is that it was not that they were prescient. It was not that they were geniuses to start. They saw things that were not working, and they had the human infrastructure at the panchayat level, at the health department level to cope, and they swung their strategy around in a massive way. And I think that's the distinction between good governance, good decision making, good problem solving. If I go back to my grad student days in the late 80s, early 90s, when we used to study operations research, which is the best strategy? The best strategy is the one that can adapt the best to changing facts or changing circumstances. And in that sense, I think Kerala has shown that. Sorry, Shankar, please go ahead.
One second.
Talk about,
Let me add 2 sentences.
Yeah.
To what both of you are saying. I will add 2 sentences. Kerala is never afraid of showing their statistics, because Kerala was actually chasing the virus, but others were really afraid of the virus in the beginning. They are really, I don't know what actually prevented them chasing the virus. whether they are having a false security that they are insulated from that one or not. Kerala was really chasing the virus to find and trying to catch maximum virus in the beginning, because if you look into the testing data of all our southern states in around 26 March, Kerala was actually almost 5 times ahead of that one. Now everybody is catching up with Kerala, but they have started the testing only very low, that very late. That's all. That's all my observation. Please carry on.
Yeah, thank you, James. Sorry, Shankar, we've been talking a lot. It's your turn now. Please talk
Okay.
in as much detail as you want. How much everything you want.
Okay. Before I go into Tamil Nadu numbers, I just want to add one thing. My perspective on what James, you and Sriram was saying. James has actually shown the mirror to Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu, like Sriram has said, scores better than Kerala in every parameters when it comes to healthcare. But in deliverability, especially in COVID, Kerala has come out trumps. Kerala is clear winner. The reason I see is Kerala has got more federal form of governance. The governance is percolated to the local level. The classic case I was trying to give you was one foreign patient from Munnar who was quarantined in a resort, was fed up with all these things, checks out of the resort without informing anyone and goes to the airport. And the local doctor and the guy in charge who comes to know this, he immediately rushes to the airport, stops the flight, pulls the patient out, puts them into quarantine, and then as a precautionary measure, they stop all passengers who have been in that contact and then do a screening for them. That is first example. Second example, I see Kerala was always doing a decisive action. The example is Kasargod. Out of blue, there was one positive case in Kasargod, and when they are doing the contact tracing, this patient has had multiple contacts, including elected representative. So they didn't wait for anything. Immediately, a specialized medical team was rushed to Kasargod, and Kasargod at ground zero, they formed a task force. And now Kasargod is almost on a safe level, I could say. James can confirm on that. So now we see Tirupur, where we see different spikes, but still things are micro-managed from Chennai. So that is the phenomenal difference between Kerala and Tamil Nadu, especially in COVID. Yeah.
I will add one more thing here. I don't know whether you are doing that one. In Kerala, what we are doing nowadays, I think it was happened within a week of that our lockdown. Two people, one person from the local panchayat and one Asha worker, visited my home and inquired about whether we are having any type of fever, cough, or sort of breathing trouble, whether we have any visitors recently. All this information they have collected. And I know from one of my friends who is now helping the government, who is actually working in US, and he came back for some other work here, but now he's helping government. He told me that they are putting all this information into the GS platform, and they are trying to see that whether there is some sort of a fever or some sort of a type of symptoms is developing a particular area. Then they are planning to go for, when the rapid tests are coming, they are going to target this particular area when they are going to do that. Whether I don't know whether Tamil Nadu is doing such type of an exercise or not.
We do. I'll come back to this. I can show you some numbers. We do something, and we wanted to do something similar lines, but I don't know how far we are going to be successful on that, looking at the numbers. Okay. Can I share my screens before that?
Yeah, please, Shankar. You're the one who has to speak for more bulk of the remaining time. I think we are all waiting to hear from you. What has Tamil Nadu done? Have they done proper strategy on sampling? Have they tested adequately? Whatever you can tell. I know you track the daily press conferences, etc.
So this was updated yesterday. So 10 days back, Kerala was around 3% something, and Tamil Nadu was at 13%. And after yesterday's number, yes, Tamil Nadu's cases have come to 4.58. On a headline level, yes, we have achieved success as headline news. But if you look carefully, if you travel one step beyond the headline news, what you could see is Kerala, to a certain extent, it is flattening to a certain extent. But whereas in the case of Tamil Nadu, we don't see an even spike. Even 2 days back, I think James was saying the cases are dropping in Tamil Nadu. It is a good sign. But then immediately after that, after his tweet, the next 3 days, the spike is going up. So this is on the comparatively of the 4 states. This is something which we should all be seeing. This is giving us some pointers. See, like I said, in the headline news, our numbers are coming down. But if you look very carefully, our numbers are always in the average region of 50 plus, except for 2-3 days where it was less than 40, 31, 38, 25. Except that every other numbers, if you look, they are always in the region of around 50. So which means the more tests we start doing, we'll keep getting the same number. That is one interference we'll have to take.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Shankar. I'll just say one thing here. This because these green bars are actually on a log scale, it is you must read the numbers rather than just look at them visually, right? For example, you do 2,700 tests, you get 31 cases on one day. Then you do 5,300 tests, then you get 49 on one day. Then you do 3,600, you get 56 one day. So at a kind of testing to positives count, this is not showing any trend to make anybody feel comfortable with, correct?
Correct. That is one thing. And when you look at this 25, 56 and 49, you should also look at 1 or 2, 79, 86. We had lower test. So one possible.
So what you're saying is at those days they were only testing people who had already shown up with severe symptoms, right? Otherwise, how do you justify that at 412 tested you get 102, 25% hit rate compared to now you test 5,000 and get 49? Right?
Like I said, the government is not transparent here. They are not giving us the number of tests, the number of repeat tests on that particular day and all those things. So we don't know what is happening. But there are some possible conclusions we can come. Those days there were no repeat tests. Probably these days the repeat tests were more. Why? Because during the fag end we are also seeing more number of discharges happening, close to around 300. So if 300 have to be discharged, they will have to be tested at least twice.
So yeah, at least twice. That means they had to be tested once positive and at least twice to validate negative before they discharge. That's the protocol, right?
Correct.
In fact, in the assembly, I'll just add one thing. In the assembly, the first case, Mr. Vijay Bhaskar, health minister, told us in the assembly that they were going to test him 3 times before discharging him. He said, we have tested him twice he has tested negative. We are not going to discharge him till we do a 3rd test. Of course, he had the luxury of testing only those people he thought about at that point. But they may be testing more than 2 times also, I'm just saying.
Yes, like you said, they first talk and then they think about what did they talk. They always talk first. That is one reason why we are in this mess. So the bottom line is we'll have to keep testing more. And again, what I also understand is this 3,000, 5,000, everything, they are testing in only to a certain group which was already tested. Probably they're testing that street, their relatives. They keep going behind that one particular already positive tested group. That could also be the reason. But by and large, the more we test, we'll keep getting the similar numbers.
Just wanted to add a point there. Mm-hmm. I recall seeing that Tamil Nadu had stated a couple of days ago that some 18,000 plus people were tested, and then they said that 15,000 unique people were tested, which would mean that they actually tested the same person a couple of times. And then they showed that as total number of tests where the count of the number of people tested was high, but then the unique number of people who were tested was much lower.
Correct. Much lower. You're right. They are never consistent with their reporting format. Each day, they come, for example, during the press meet, they hand out a printout, which is vastly different from what the CM says, or at the end of the day, corona.tn.gov.in, the website update, it is vastly different. You don't find a similar pattern everywhere. So that is the problem. And here, this 5,300 are total tests. which is inclusive of the unique test as well as repeat test. This is one thing which I try to break up with the kind of narrative they are building. They are trying to build a single source narrative, right? So if you could see, this one is total positive. The first pink one are COVID positive on that particular day, and then the blue one are single source. Okay, and naturally the green one are the others. So if you look at it, all through the days when they're speaking about the single source, and suddenly one day they stop speaking about single source. From that day onwards, if you look at it, the non-single source positive are gradually picking up. If you could see from 11th.
Yeah.
So this is also we should see, which also means so far they have been testing
this
only one.
This happened for Delhi also. Arvind Kejriwal stopped tweeting about from their table. The single source is disappeared from yesterday onwards because for the last 2 days they are not getting any single source.
Correct.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
the curve is flattened for the single source, but not for the other community, for the other group. Okay.
That is one, Shankar. That's one reason. When they are that is one reason you are seeing lot of testing and less number of positives, because at that time they were testing on the single source so many people to find out. Sure,
So,
carry on.
I mean, to conclude from your theory, Wilson, James, if we keep testing more and more, we'll still be getting positives. It's not that the next 3 days it is going to go off.
So, Shankar, my advice to you is that now globally they are, instead of, I also started looking into the positive plus test. Now globally they are saying that there are a lot of researchers who are in virology. They are saying that instead of that one, we should reverse the number. Instead of that one, we will do what is the test coverage by number of tests for confirmed cases.
Okay.
So that, along with when we are equating with the mortality, we will get a very, very interesting insights into that one. Thank you.
Sure. And then we have started saying that lockdown has helped us tremendously and all those stuff. So if you look at it, if you take the cutoff as 24th March for the lockdown, and before that we had only 3 cases, and every other case has been after the lockdown. So which means lockdown is not the only solution. Testing is the actual solution.
Excellent point. Yeah.
So without knowing this, if you are going to extend the lockdown, we are going into a perpetual doom. We would be saved from the corona, but we would be buried from the financial mismanagement. Yes. And then there is one more thing which I'm a little worried, or I could not comprehend. On a daily basis, the number of admissions is always higher, whereas confirmed positives are much lesser, even tested. So which means a significant portion of the people who are admitted are not being tested. Should I understand it that way? Or they have been tested and the results are awaited. So either way, there is something, the government is not very clear in what they are saying.
Yeah, I mean, just visually, Shankar, if I look at this, even if you say there's a lag of 3 days, 5 days, whatever, of course, my eyes are not perfect. But if I just think of, if there was a lag in result to testing, if you just shifted one curve relative to the other curve, if you shifted the admission curve,
48 hours, 2 days, 2 days.
You should be able to get overlap. But I don't see that. Even, at least visually, I don't see that. If I try to mentally shift the curve, it's not showing that.
No, 314, if you could see, on this day, the admissions were more, but the tested were less.
Yeah.
And then there's a gap in between. If you could see in this, there's a gap in between.
Well, they don't release the data.
No, they had given a negative admission date.
Wow. Meaning more discharged than admitted.
Yes, negative, because the previous day was 1,800 something. So on the next day, they gave 1,600 something, which means they should have been discharged.
Yeah.
But the discharge number did not match that day. So since I have a negative number, it is going this side. I cannot show that. See, the government claims 100,000 patients have been quarantined. Passengers from airport passengers have been quarantined or screened. Okay. Out of this 100,000, 80,000 have completed this mandated 28 days quarantine period. Okay, which means there's still 22,000 passengers who have not completed 28 days, which means the government says directly or indirectly, these people are vulnerable or would need a testing. This 22,000 needs a testing. Okay. Now we say there are.
Shankar, one point,
Yeah?
single point.
Yeah.
One single point. There,
Okay.
in the same graph,
Okay.
your daily bulletin start with in Tamil Nadu till date 2.10 lakh passengers were
Correct.
screened at the airports of Chennai.
Correct.
Total number of persons home quarantine yesterday was 1 lakh. So
1
where
lakh.
is that?
The remaining 1
So
lakh.
where is that 1.1 lakh? 1.1 lakh disappeared. This one
No.
this 1 lakh
Actually,
is not only this 1 lakh. Their quarantine is not only the air passengers. They are the contacts also. They are the contacts also. So how much air passengers they are able to trace? This number is not.
no. This is
50% is still out.
correct. See,
Yeah.
total screened is 210,000,
Yeah.
210,000, and home quarantine is 100,000.
Yeah.
Okay. This number keeps increasing on a daily basis by 500s, by thousands, like that. This
Okay.
number keeps increasing.
Yeah.
So, which means they're still tracing the air passengers.
I think this is a very important point we need to highlight as well, that there's still a whole bunch of people who are not being traced properly from the airports. Right?
Going by the global trend, this 22,000 people could be vulnerable. And now you have this 22,000 people, and the government says they have quarantined 23,000 people, home quarantine, and then you have 1,800 admissions, and then you have 34 people in government quarantine. So if you look at this number on the left side of the pie, on the right side of the pie chart, you have this 23,000 plus 20, you have almost this 46,000, 48,000. Among this 48,000, you have only done a 29,000 testing. So which means even among the group which the government says could be vulnerable or they need to be monitored or quarantined, even among that group, our testing percentage is slightly more than 50%. Total cases with symptoms noticed today, this was on 15. They say on one zone there was 13. So total case was 318 and queued is 300. So the question is, what was that symptom? What action did they take? Did they do any testing? Did a medical professional visit them?
Yeah, I can tell you the answer is no to all of those, right? Meaning, basically, my experience and multiple others I know, most of these are somebody asks at the gate, anybody had a problem? If they say yes, they say okay. Then 2 days later, they say, then got a problem, say no, then they take it away. So these are all done by contract employees on a temporary, payroll, who are not medical staff, who are just, clerically going through the symptoms. So I can guarantee you that neither the validation of symptoms nor the removal of symptoms has been done in any medical way. It is done by self-reporting.
Yes,
of
and
people get.
I would say you are using a very, very decent word. I would say this is criminal negligence, because this data is being fed into a system where every other state and every other country is looking at it, and either they get an appreciation certificate or something. Like Sriram said earlier, this is perfect event management happening. The total symptoms of 4,087, and out of this 4,700, 4,000 they declared cured. So this is something which we should be highlighting, because if the government cannot confirm what they've done on this, or if this is ignored, this could turn into a major outbreak. This high-rise building can always afford whatever the treatment is. 28 days lockdown, 200 days lockdown, they can sustain. But this below poverty line households, even 24 hours lockdown is life and death for them.
Yeah, very scary. I would say in poor neighborhoods, it's more like 4 or 5 people per household. So you're looking at 20,000-30,000 people there.
The practical challenge in contact tracing is if somebody takes a bus to go from one location to another location, the person actually took a bus. You don't know who are the passengers who travel along with this person. So how do you do contact tracing?
Exactly. And
as of 16th April, that is what they say, correct? Of the 210,000 screened, only about 1 lakh something have been in quarantine, of which 80 something have been released from quarantine, etc., etc.
And
So do they
you'll
give
have to
out
watch
these
this.
statistics?
You'll have to watch this
Do they
sample
give
under
this
progress,
every day?
1,400. They give this every
Yeah.
day.
Do they give this? Okay, excellent.
It's cumulated.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this 1,400 is something which you should watch out.
Meaning it's a sample taken, but result not yet come back.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
And this number is significantly on this side. So which means they are staggering the press releases, which is what I
They're
could.
staggering the test results coming
Yes,
out
correct. Exactly.
because they are releasing something. Put another way, for the number of cases that are coming out every day at 50, 30, 60, 80, 1,400 is a huge backlog, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, in theory, if 30% of the samples tested positive, it would just blow everything out of the water, all the statistics we have ever seen till now, correct?
I mean, our confirmed positives and backlog are almost equal.
2 days ago in Tanjavur district, they reported 17 cases out of the total of 50 something reported. That is 30% of the cases came from one district. Yesterday, 57% of the cases, 20 something cases out of 40 odd came from Tirupur. So my question is, how is it? That's why I asked the question publicly on Twitter yesterday. Shouldn't they report how many samples were tested in each district and therefore how many positives came? Because otherwise, you're seeing clustering, one day district X, one day district Y, one day district A, and it's not realistic that all of a sudden the positives are only there. There's something that is not clear. And all I mean is, if you have 1,400 tests, it could be that they're processing this in a staggered way.
I think we have one of the largest number of testing centers in Tamil Nadu, as per government's claim. So when we have 25 testing centers, we should be testing more. So this 5,000 is not enough. We should be doing more. That is one. And then, like I said, I mean, this is on a political side. This is the only time we should demand larger devolution of powers. Everything controlled. If you look at Tamil Nadu, everything is micromanaged from Chennai. And similarly, on a national level, everything is micromanaged from Delhi. This will not help us in pandemic. So we'll have to have a distribution of power. Yeah, so that's it.
I couldn't agree more. That's an excellent
and I had one
point.
I had one more point. Probably I think I had given you the PTR on this. Probably we should think how the GST could play a part here. Should we demand that state GST should directly come into the state's coffers?
If there's anything you want to add on concrete steps the government should take to improve where we are today.
So now that the rapid antibody test kits have arrived, the government can actually go ahead and do pooled testing. So they can actually ramp up on testing, and they can go ahead and do pooled testing, which will be like really fast testing that they can do. And I think the Tamil Nadu Health Department has close to 2,000 lab technicians. So if they can deploy a large chunk of them in pooled testing, I think we can ramp up our testing numbers completely. And the first point that I made, I think we are missing a unified command. There seems to be some disconnect in bureaucracy and in political establishment with respect to handling the situation. It is time to come together. And as rightly pointed out by you guys, I think every district collectorate should be empowered to do this, to do what is best for their district and to move forward independently. I think that's the way to go.
The first thing you have to do is you have to increase the antibody testing and to see that how much is your R0 and other things. Because it is very important whether there is already your cities are infected or not. You have to find out rather than looking at a very small places. You are concentrating on hotspots. You have to wider that one. Then only you will be able to say confidently where you are heading. Because now it is a blind fight. You are only selectively looking for persons. You have to look beyond that one. You have to wrap it up your rapid antibody test. Same time, whichever positive cases are there, you can confirm it through the PCR test. That's a protocol actually suggested by ICMR also.
My biggest concern is that the government of Tamil Nadu doesn't realize the scale of the problem. You know, we are all shaped by our experiences. And I think they look back at SARS-1 or they look back at H1N1 and they think to themselves that this is going to be something that can be managed away. that if they can control the political narrative and the numbers reporting, and they are so nervous about their image and the scheduled elections and the stability of the government and the perception and so forth, that unlike most states, in Kerala, the chief minister has reached out to the leader of the opposition and they're working closely together. Even a Mr. Modi, who sees himself as a kind of an all-powerful mandated leader, re-elected second time, has at least the optics of calling an all-party meeting and asking for our government from the DMK, who has experience from the H1N1 days, from other parties, from the communist parties whose colleagues have the experience from Kerala. So I think the fundamental problem we have here is neither on the medical side nor on the economic side does the government understand the enormous scale of this problem, and they are still playing petty politics. And unfortunately, this is the difference between elected kind of leaders who have been mandated by the people. The chief minister came through the back door. If we had had Ms. Jayalalitha, whatever my political differences with her, she would have taken this head on, because she had the courage of the conviction that the people mandated her to do something. And here we have people who are just swimming in the dark, trying to figure out, how can we project only that facet of things so that it looks like we're on top of the situation. So my big concern is that the enormity of the crisis, both medically and economically, is lost on people who are still playing at a level and in an era. Realistically, this is a different era we face going forward, right? From a structural point, we have never seen this kind of economic consequence. We have never seen a disaster that will last for weeks or months, in terms of, it's not as if people are going to rush to get together inside planes and malls after the lockdown is lifted. And if they do and there's still a medical problem, then we're going to get a medical disaster. So we are almost in a new era from a globalization perspective, from the impact on democracy perspective, from the impact on federalism perspective. And our guys, I worry, are still fumbling around with the only game they know, which is yesterday's game, having come through the back door. I hope that they start to think better, and they start to think, as more data comes in and the consequences are apparent to them, they realize that we're all heading into the unknown. It's better we work together to go into the unknown than try to pretend that it's the known and play the old game, because that game doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, let me thank all of you. It's been hugely informative for me, and it will be informative for many more people.